what's up you guys, this is Rob from The Gay Guy Plays, and today on The Daily Grind, we're going to be chatting about a subject that I don't really like tackling too often, and that of course is reworks. Now, I feel like these discussions kind of open up the floodgates for wannabe programmers and developers that are like, I want to make my own frame, so I'm going to adjust this frame to become the frame that I want to make. No. We also have the people who are coming out that are like the white knights and absolutely love this frame. We're like, oh my god, don't touch her, she's perfect the way she is. People just don't understand her, you're terrible, stop ruining the game by reworking everything. No, I'm gonna need all of you guys to pause. So basically what ended up happening is on yesterday's stream, we were kind of discussing Nyx and exactly what her issues were, and I'll be honest with you, at that point in time I was like, I don't know what I want to do with her, until I took a shit midstream. I went ahead and flushed everything out, and all of the good ideas came rushing on in. So I was like, oh my god, I totally have a way that we can keep Nyx still iconically Nyx, but solve some of the issues that we have with her kit. So let's go ahead and talk all about that. Now, as we know, one of the big things that older frames suffer over time is, of course, new mechanics are released, new frames are released, and those frames can share a lot of her kit. One of the big things that we've kind of come across was the fact that Vlad, aka the Revenant frame, aka Mr. Eidolon 2018, is going to be released, and he has a very powerful charm in his kit that can actually charm other enemies into fighting for him. So the issue with that is that kind of takes the place of Nyx's chaos, but let's be real, this has been going on for a while. Loki's irradiating disarm, Oberon's hallowed ground, even Vauban's concussion grenades can all do very similar effects. Hell, if you have a Zenistar and you go ahead and toss some radiation on that, you can get something very similar as well. So Nyx's chaos has slowly become less hers and more shared amongst other people. In addition to that, one of her big abilities is of course absorb, which is often paired with assimilate, but let's be real, Valkyrie already has invulnerability, so she's got that down the line, and so does Wukong. Wukong just can't die as long as he's played well, and let's be real, invincibility didn't really save any of those frames. So a part of me is kind of like, a majority of her kit is just not her own anymore. The only thing that she's really got is mind control, and is it really that great? And Psychic Bolts, well, we won't talk about Psychic Bolts yet, okay? So I figured that one of the things that she needs is something that is iconically hers. Something that makes her very, very powerful and nobody else can do to the level that she can do. Next thing that I also wanted to talk about is the fact that, you know, Nyx's skill set is a bit too passive. She's a very, very passive frame. It's very much kind of like, okay, mind control, okay, chaos, alright, let me jump into assimilate just in case anything hits me, right? So she's kind of just set it and forget it, which makes her combat less interesting. Now, of course, a lot of people love that set it and forget it playstyle, so I don't want to do too much to that. But I do want to go ahead and introduce something that's a little bit more active and that will get people to participate more in active combat with her. So those are the main things that I want to go ahead and touch on as issues for Nyx to conquer, to dominate mentally. So the first thing that I want to go ahead and introduce is not a new passive, but something similar to Atlas's Rubble stacks or Nidus's Mutation stacks. So I wanted to introduce something called Dominance. So we'd have a little dominance meter on the side of the screen, and all that it does is it improves some of her abilities depending on how many enemies are affected by her on the battlefield. So think mind control, think things like chaos, and things like the second ability that I'm going to change up a little bit. The more enemies she has under her control, the more powerful her abilities will become. So that's, just keep that in mind, little dial in the corner that says, you know, how much. And then let's go ahead and move on to her abilities. First and foremost, the one thing that I wanted to touch on is mind control. Mind control is a really cool ability because you can go ahead and, you know, take control of an enemy, especially a very powerful target on the battlefield. However, one of the things that I wish that mind control was a little bit better at was of course tanking things for you. If you're not inside your assimilate, Nyx is extremely squishy, and if you are inside of assimilate, you have to like resort to wonky things like jumping around with your operator. And I don't feel like that's necessarily the greatest for the flow of combat. And honestly, if you're a client, if you're client side instead of hosting, that can lead to some weird situations if you're getting any kind of lag whatsoever. So one of the things that I wanted to do with mind control is really up that creature's threat level. And that's one of the things that I want for Nyx. In fact, you'll hear it in the next ability, but threat level is going to be a big thing. Make it almost so threatening that enemies rarely shoot Nyx, but will always go for the mind-controlled target first. Now, of course, we want to make sure that the new counter that we've added in will actually go ahead and factor in on this as well. And the dominance counter, the more enemies that are affected on the battlefield will actually strengthen that mind-controlled target. So what'll happen is they will do extra damage. And I think that's a pretty cool little addition to go along with it. So now we've got Nyx being defensive and having a bigger offensive boost. Now, of course, she does have her Mind Freak ability, which makes the, that makes the mind-controlled enemy stronger. But think about this. Now you're going to get stacks from Mind Control, and you're also, you're going to get stacks from Mind Freak, and you're also going to get stacks from Dominance. So your mind-controlled target will become even stronger. Now, the next ability that I wanted to go ahead and introduce is going to be something completely different. It can be very, very similar to Psychic Bolts if they want to still keep that animation or however, but as you guys know, Psychic Bolts was definitely one of the weakest parts in Nyx's kit. It's like a little bit of damage, and it kind of synergizes a little bit with her passive, which disarmed enemies. You're like, okay, whatever. Like, not a big deal. Ooh, and can we say, maybe, and I just thought about this on the spot, what if Dominance, like the little Dominance counter, could boost Nyx's passive? So it's almost kind of like Loki's irradiating disarm, like maybe boost it up to 75%, maybe hell, even 100%, whatever. Listen, let's give Nyx some love. Anyway, let's get to the next ability. So Psychic Bolts, like I was saying, is the weakest part of her kit. However, what I thought is, you know, maybe they can keep the animation so they don't have to re-rig anything, but instead replace Psychic Bolts with Nemesis Bolts. And I thought that this would be a great callback to the fact that, you know, Nemesis was from Dark Sector, you know, kind of plays into the history. But what Nemesis Bolts would do is they would actually target enemies. Maybe they could deal a little bit of damage if you wanted to do that. I don't think that's necessarily necessary when you see what's going on, but it'll mark enemies, it will reduce their damage output, and it'll increase the damage that they take. It's not the end of it, okay? It also increases their threat level. Again, that's something that I definitely wanted to play with, and will also keep Nyx safe if she's not going to be running around with Assimilate. Now, here's the thing. It increases their threat level so that mind-controlled and chaos enemies will prioritize killing marked enemies. So where I got this tech from was the fact that we can use Korra's cat and have it target enemies, specific enemies for it to attack. So I was like, why can't we just mark some enemies using similar tech, maybe using similar aggression, and have all of these chaos enemies attack these targets? Right? So now it makes you very active because of the fact that you want to go ahead and pick out priority targets, you know, maybe and maybe Nemesis Bolts could only target 2 or 3 enemies at a time, maybe 4 enemies at a time, and everything would come rushing in to fight these targets. Keep Nyx safe, make her a little bit more survivable, and also it would take out prioritized targets. However, we're not done, because Rob likes to, you know, mess around with some mechanics. Alright, so upon death, marked enemies will explode, dealing base damage, okay, which is improved by Dominance. So we have this base damage when they die, but it's also based off of a percentage of the enemy's health. So now what we have is we have Nyx that can tell enemies, like tell this like chaotic group of enemies, mark these enemies, make them kill them, make them do area of effect damage, not only based off of their, not only based off of the base of the ability itself, but also a portion of the enemy's HP, which would help this ability scale. So now Nyx has control, she can scale, she can deal damage by mind controlling enemies. So it all stays within theme. Everything stays within this, like, I'm gonna have everybody else work for me kind of theme. So that's definitely what I wanted to go ahead and do. Plus, it could actually act very similarly to Nova's molecular prime. So basically what happens is you kill one enemy, that enemy explodes, that enemy kills the other nemesis bolted enemy, that explodes, and then, you know, so on and so forth. I think maybe they might tune the percentage down to maybe just 50% of that enemy's health, but regardless, it's still gonna scale and will keep her active on the battlefield. And the cool thing about it is, it makes Nyx players think, because they can't just go around nemesis bolting everything, because if they nemesis bolt everything, then who's gonna be the ones attacking the things that are nemesis bolted, right? So that's definitely something to keep in mind, and will make Nyx players think a little bit more. Next part, of course, is Chaos. I don't want to fuck with that, so we're going to leave Chaos the way it is. So everybody who loves Chaos, you can still love Chaos. And one of the things I do want to touch on too, a lot of people were telling me, oh, you know, you let Chaos spread like sarin spores. And I want to address that a little bit. That's a cool thought to let it spread like spores, but Nyx is already passive enough as it is. So a part of me wants to introduce something a little bit more active. Recasting Chaos keeps her active. You know, casting things like Nemesis Bolts will keep her active. So it'll give her a part of her kit which she can continuously use instead of just kind of set it and forget it. So that's why I'm not suggesting any of those kind of changes for Chaos. Chaos is good as it is. All of you hardcore hardcore Nyx players who love Chaos, we gonna leave it alone. We ain't gonna fuck with it, okay? And then last but not least, we have Absorb, which of course is an iconic ability as well. And I didn't want to do too much to this either because, you know, it pairs well with Assimilate, and I'm not trying to fuck up your Assimilate game. You can still have your Assimilate game. However, what I am gonna do is the base damage will be boosted by Dominance. So that way, if you're not really running any power strength, but you are keeping enemies on the field controlled, you can still go ahead and have some, an extra boost to your damage outputs. Now, one of the things that I wanted to chat about was, of course, just Dominance on its own. While it does affect the rest of her kit, so she does get a little bit more synergy out of it, I was also thinking that maybe Dominance could provide a boost. Maybe, okay, couple things, because we don't want to make it too OP. Maybe a boost to her damage output, you know, just all the damage that she does naturally, or maybe provides a smaller damage output for her and her allies. So, you know, maybe on her own, maybe at max stacks of Dominance, she's doing 100% more damage, or maybe she's doing 50% more damage and the team is also doing 50% more damage, just so it's kind of like spread in the love. But yeah, so I'm really interested to see what you guys think about this. Do you guys agree and disagree when it comes to what I think are the main sources of trouble when it comes to Nyx's kit? Toss that in the comments below. And also, what do you think about the Dominant Stacks passive? I just feel like a lot of frames now are becoming have a little bit more management to them, and at least this keeps Nyx on her toes saying, oh, I need to recast because my dominance counter is too low. Let's go ahead and make sure that. And here's the thing, maybe we can make dominance count, the dominance stacks max up to 10 enemies at once to get the most benefit. So that way it's not like with Nidus where you constantly feel like you have to like spam stacks left, right, and center. Anyway, toss your feelings down in the comments below, and that about does it for me for now. So as always, love somebody, hurt nobody, and touch your body. I'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye.